and I hope now you are able to see the slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we will look at two types of derivational affixes, and we are already aware of what is derivation. So in a derivation, a word changes its grammatical class, but that is not a compulsory thing. A word may change its grammatical class, but the compulsory thing that a word changes its meaning. So now we will look at two types of derivational affixes. This is class 1 affix. So these are affixes in column 1, as you can see: ity, y, ive, ial, ize, ion. So what type of change they trigger, that we will see. So ity, we have examples of sanity. We have a word like san, and we have sanity. We have a word like public, and we have publicity. So what is happening, if you look at the word public, the final sound is k. In the word public, the final sound is k, and we know that public is a root and base for ity. So when this ity is affixed to the word public, then the final k changes into s. So public become publicity. So this consonant k changes into s. Similarly, we have a word like sane, and when we say ity, then it becomes sanity. So there is a vowel change that we have, and a becomes a, sanity. Fine. So this little change we find when ity is attached. Now we have a word like uh, democracy. Fine. Or a word like democrat. So we have a word initially democrat, and to which we affix y. So what happens? The final consonant of the base changes from t to s. So this final t, as in democrat, t changes into s, democracy. So this is, and stress is also shift. So here the stress is on the first syllable in democrat, and here is on second, democracy. So democracy, more will get the stress, and here de gets the stress. So similarly in public, the first syllable is stressed, because in public we know there are two syllables, and first one is stressed, public. But when we when we affix ity, then we have three syllables: publicity. Fine. Sorry, four syllables: publicity. So which one get the second syllable? Li get the stress, publicity. Fine. So this thing happens. Then we have ive. So we have a word like product, and when we attach ive, then we have productive. So again, what happens here? There is no change in sound, but there is a shift in stress. So when we say product, then our stress is on first syllable. But when we say productive, then the stress is on second syllable, productive. Fine. When we attach ial to part, so part is a word, and when we say part and partial, fine, so t becomes sh. So this change we have: part, the final sound is t, but in partial it is sh. So this change. Ize. So when we have a word like critic, the final sound is k in critic, but when we attach ize, then it becomes sa, criticize. Fine. So you have critic, but criticize. So this change, again a sound change that we have. Then ion. Fine. So in ion, like we have a word like native, net, ion, and we have a word like nation. So t becomes sh. This thing happens when we attach ion to it. So this is class 1 affix, where you have a stress shift, or you have a change in sound. So this is the class 1. And when these affixes are added to a word, they trigger these changes. Now we have type 2. So these type 2 are phonologically neutral. That means like there is no change. There is no change in the pronunciation. So we have prompt and promptness. We have hair and hairless. We have hope, hopeful, quite, quietly, defend, defender, self, selfish. So they do not trigger any change. So class 2 affix cannot intervene between the root and the class 1 affix. So there is one more rule that we have. So we have seen which are our class 1. Class 1 affixes, they trigger change. That is the main difference between class 1 and class 2. Class 1 affixes, they trigger change either in sound or in stress. And we already know that English is a stress time language. That means every word is stressed in English language. And when two stressed words are used, then we have a possibility that either we stress both or we leave a stress on one. And sometimes when content word and functional words are used, then content words are stressed and functional words are not. So what is this class 2 affix? That means phonological neutral affix, they can't intervene. Intervene means they can't come in between the root and class 1 affix. So here we have class 1 affix, uh, relational, fine. So root is relay, and ION and AL. Then decisiveness, so ness is your class 2, so it is not intervening in between here. And if there is an intervention like this, fearlessity, then the word will go wrong. Fine, so that we want to say that first we have a root, then class 1 affix, then class 2 affix. It will not happen that root, class 2 affix and class 1. So that thing will not happen in English language. So I hope this is quite clear. Two types of derivational affixes, class 1 affixes and class 2 affixes. All of you, anyone has any doubt or you have understood, just tell me.
So no doubt.
No doubt, good. Okay, so what we have studied till date. So this is a brief outline. So we have studied morphology. Morphology is the study of word formation, and in when it comes to word formation, we have two types of word formation, through derivation and through compounding. In derivation, we have two types, affixation and non-affixation. So we have seen what happens in affixation. We have prefixation and suffixation when it comes to the English language. And where can we do not have non-affixation? When we have these acronymy, initialism, back formation, blending, clipping, and reduplication. So these are the things that we have discussed till date, and now we will move further and we will look at cognitive assumptions and morphology. So how cognitive, that is something related to mind. So these mental assumptions are associated with morphology. So that way we will look at now. So in the cognitive model of language, grammar is viewed as being symbolic in nature. So grammar is not viewed as structured, but grammar is viewed as symbolic. So you already know the concept of symbol. So each word is like a symbol. Like we have different symbols, like non-linguistic symbols as well. For example, white pigeon is a symbol of peace. Fine. Cross. Cross is a symbol of red cross. If it is red cross, then it's a symbol of this medical medicine. Fine. And if it is green cross, then it is a symbol of engineering. Fine. So similarly, we have a cross, another cross, that is a symbol of Christianity. So let's say there is a symbol like Om we have. So it's a symbol of Hinduism. So likewise, certain symbols like Om is a linguistic symbol. Otherwise, cross, different type of crosses, pigeon, they are non-linguistic symbols. So this is the concept of symbol that we have. So grammar is viewed as being symbolic in nature. That means like we have a word and it represents something. That is the meaning of symbolic in nature. Symbolicity is the quality of linguistic units being associated with meaning. So we have some expression, spoken or written, because both are the part of linguistic units, and they are associated with meaning. So it is a structured inventory of linguistic unit. Now, what is this inventory and structured that we will look at? What is the meaning of structured here particularly? What is the meaning of unit here? And what is the meaning of inventory here? But I hope like you have understood the concept of symbolicity, and symbolicity means a quality, because ITY is equal to quality of linguistic units being associated with meaning. So when we say something, it is associated with some meaning. That is here symbolicity means. So we already know that language is a set of signals. So we have signal 1, signal 2, signal 3, and signal n, and through which we communicate. That means like one word is one signal, another word is another signal, next word is another signal. So these signals we express, and these signals are like symbols. Fine. So they are associated with some meaning also. So what is a unit? A unit means any simple or composite expression. Simple means, let's say when I say happy, happy is a simple expression, and when I say unhappy, unhappy is a composite expression morphologically, because unhappy has two morpheme that we have. So when we have more than one morpheme, then we know it is a complex, morphologically complex word. So a unit means any simple or composite expression which is frequently used and thoroughly mastered, thus acquiring the status of a habit or a cognitive routine. So that means like when you are actually happy, or when you are not actually happy whatsoever, but if you, when you want to say I am happy, then it is quite ready in your mind. So you need not to think of like what should I say when I want to express happiness. You will say I am happy. Fine. So this is a habit that you know, like this is a type of routine. For example, when you meet someone, you say good morning. So you need not to think like, okay, when I meet someone, what will I think? What will I say? And then you will say, how are you? Then you'll say, I'm good. How are you? How are you doing? Things are fine. So all such things are thoroughly mastered by a speaker. Fine. So all these expressions are thoroughly mastered by a speaker. So the words that you know, they are thoroughly mastered by you, and those words have acquired the status of a habit or a cognitive routine. So they have become like a routine. You need not to think, and like you speak. So this is the concept of unit here. And inventory. And what is inventory? Inventory simply means listing, list. It means a detailed list of all the linguistic resources which speakers exploit in constructing units. So you construct these units. How do you construct these units? For example, you have three units, three simple units that you have. uh, John loves Mary. Fine. So you can say like loves is a composite expression because it has two morpheme, but John is a simple morpheme, loves is a composite expression, Mary is again a simple expression. So John loves Mary. You have these three things with you. Now, these things are stored in your mind somewhere, and likewise, these three words, likewise, other hundreds and thousands of words are also stored. So you can exploit. You can exploit. How can you exploit? So you can also say Mary loves John. Fine. You can also say John does not love Mary. Fine. You can also say no, John does not love Mary, but John likes Mary. Fine. Or you can also say the opposite thing, John does not like Mary. Fine. So all type of things you can say very easily, because uh, you have a detailed list of all the linguistic resources that are required for communication. So this is inventory, the concept of inventory that you have. Now, structured means that the units are related to one another in the organized way. So you know, like when you have three, John loves and Mary, and you want to say like John loves Mary, then how to organize them? This is simply the meaning of structured. You can't say loves John Mary, or you can't say Mary John loves. So this is the way like English does not work. So you will say John loves Mary or Mary loves John, whatsoever. So this is the meaning of structure. So these three things are there. We have discussed that symbolicity is the quality of linguistic units. Now you know which are linguistic units. So you have simple words, complex words. Being associated with meaning. Those words are associated with meaning. It is a structured. Structured means like you know how to use these words in a meaningful communication. Structured inventory of linguistic units. So you have all such things in your mind. A linguistic unit consists of a semantic structure. Semantic means meaning. So that means like a word, when I say tree, then you have some meaning associated with that. Tree is a linguistic unit. So when I say tree, or when you read tree, so whether it is spoken or whether it is written, you have some meaning associated with that. So a linguistic unit consists of a semantic structure, a phonological structure, and a symbolic structure linking them. So like tree and a meaning associated with that tree, there is a link. So when I say tree, whether it is spoken or written, it is known as phonological structure. So don't confuse phonological means only spoken. Phonological structure means both spoken and written. And a symbolic structure, that means some concept that is associated with that. So and both these things are in your mind, like how to pronounce tree, or how to write tree, or how to read when a tree is written, that is also there, or how to understand when someone pronounced tree, that is all there in your mind, and the concept that is associated with that particular word, that both things are there. The phonological structure refers to form, a shape, which can be spoken or written. So it's like a shape, a form, and that is there in your a mental form that you have. So someone says tree, then you also know what it means. When you read it, then it is also known to you, or when you write it, then it is also known to you. The semantic structure refers to meaning, which is related to the concept. So when I say tree, and then you think of a tree, you have a concept of tree, irrespective of the fact whether it is a palm tree, whether it is a coconut tree, whether it is a banyan tree. These are hardly matters, but you have some concept of tree. A concept is a thought or notion formed in the mind. So because we are studying cognitive assumptions, so what is a concept? Anything that is a thought, or anything that is formed in the mind in the form of a notion, which is symbolized in language by means of phonological structures. Fine. So when I say something and you have some concept in your mind, or you understand it, simply this is the meaning, that when I say something and you have some understanding of that, then this is the meaning. The linkage between phonological and semantic structure is not arbitrary. So generally what there is a linguist, Faninandi Saussure, he says that the relationship between signifier and signified is arbitrary. That means the relationship between the form and the concept is arbitrary. There is no direct link between them. But what we believe in cognitive assumptions, we believe that the linkage between phonological structure and semantic structure is motivated by the manner in which speakers interact with the world. So so someone who lives on poles, like poles means like Iceland. Iceland is a country that is near poles. So in India we have uh, two concepts related to snow and ice. So snow is like something natural, and ice is something that is manufactured. So we have these two concepts related to. But someone who is living in Iceland, and in that country, in that particular country, you have different type uh, of snow. So they have different words related to that. So that is the thing, like the relationship phonological structure and semantic structure is motivated by the manner in which speakers interact with the world. So for example, in India, we have desert only in Rajasthan, not in other states. But let's say in Saudi Arabia or in Gulf countries, you will find desert all over. So they have more concepts associated with desert, more words which are associated with camel. So that is the thing, that the relationship between phonological structure and semantic structure is motivated by the manner in which speakers interact with the world, because we do not require those words in our vocabulary. So that's why those words are not there. And when the words are not there, then the concepts associated with those words are also not there. That is the meaning here. So we will take one example, a lexical expression. Lexical expression means a word like cheesy. We say cheesy. For example, is regarded as an association between phonological structure. So we transcribe this word like this, cheesy. You have already studied in your phonology, cheesy. And this is a phonological structure. That means like we are not talking about these sounds. That means like these sounds are in our brain. So whether it is written like cheesy, we also understand like what it is written, and the semantic structure like cheesy. So that means like semantic structure we have written in all capital and in bracket like this, square bracket. But what it means like we know the meaning of cheesy. That is the meaning. And what is the meaning of cheesy? That is something that is related to cheese. So the use of bound morpheme y is motivated by the idea of likening something to cheese. So something is like cheese that becomes cheesy. That is the meaning that we have. So we have the concept of cheese, and something has a quality of cheese, then we'll say cheesy. This is basically the meaning that we have. So for morphology, the cognitive assumption of symbolicity has three significant consequences. So we have three significant consequences when we attach morphology with cognitive assumptions that are associated with that of symbolicity. So what are there? Morphological expressions are bipolar. Bi means two. They remain on two poles. One is phonological structure. That means the way we pronounce a word, the way we read a word, the way we write a word. That is at one pole we have. And another pole is we have the meaning associated with that expression. So these two are there. The act of mating the phonological and semantic pole is referred to as pairing. Fine. So generally when we hear a word, we have a meaning associated with that in our mind. And how is it possible? Because of the pairing. The pairing is motivated by discourse demands or communicative purposes. What is that? For example, there is a word like bank. Now we know that the meaning of bank is a financial institution. So you when you say uh, I'm going to the bank to deposit some money, then the meaning of bank here is you are going to a financial institution. And when you say, let's say 9 o'clock in the night, that I'm going to bank to get some fresh air. So that means you are not talking about financial bank, financial institution bank, but you are talking about river bank. And you know that in the night near river, you get cool breeze. So this is the meaning, like the pairing is motivated by discourse demand. So the bank remains same. The word bank remains same, but uh, at one instance you have the meaning of financial institution, and another you have a meaning of a river bank. So this is what we mean, that the pairing is motivated by discourse demand. So it's not the case like bank will always remain financial institution. It is not the case. It depends upon the context. The phonological pole symbolizes the semantic pole. So that means like this is symbolization, like this is the symbolicity that we have. The phonological pole symbolizes the semantic pole. That means like when I say bank, either you will think of a financial institution if it is in that context, or you will think of river bank if it is in other context. The form and meaning equally contribute to the makeup of the resulting formation. So it's like we have one-to-one match that we have. And why we do have this match? Because uh, the relationship between phonological structure and semantic structure is motivated by the manner in which speakers interact with the word for that particular purpose. So we can say that the two poles are inseparable. That means like we have a word and we have a meaning associated with that. For example, the morpheme ity in civility. So we have a word like civil, and when we attach ity, then we have civility. It is a symbolic structure linking the phonological structure ity with the semantic structure ity. Now, when we write semantic structure like this in all capital and in a square bracket, that means we are talking about the concept associated with that. This is like the way we write or the way we understand its meaning. So this is again a mental construct. This one is again in the mental construct. So ity is again a mental construct, phonological. Here doesn't mean like only how it is pronounced, but how it is spelled also, expressing the state of being civil. Fine. So this is the situation that we have. So you have understood this concept or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this little activity for all of you, we will do it together. I have solved it for you. So what is that? Identify the phonological and semantic structure of the following derivation. Fine. So we have phonological structure and semantic structure following the derivational morphemes and the idea which they express. So I have done like, so ISO, ISO. So how it is pronounced? The phonological structure is ISO. And this is the semantic structure. That means we know how to spell it. And what is the meaning associated with that? ISO means equal. Fine. So now who will tell me the second one? So what is the phonological structure of second one? Who will tell me? Yes. Who will tell me the phonological structure of second? Anyone? Yes, who will tell me?
Sir,
What it is
echo.
written? Yes. So it is like echo. Fine. So you have echo. So how we will do this? We will write like this. I am doing it for you. So first you will write it the phonological structure. So like A K O, echo. Fine. So we will write the sounds. Then what we will write here? We will write in all capital the same thing, E C O. We will write like this. And what is the meaning of this? What is the semanticity of this? It is means environment. Fine. So this is the way it is to be solved. Now what is this? It is. Fine. What is it is? Okay, so I'll give you this as an assignment. So you solve it and send it. These three you will solve. Two I have already done. So you can consult a dictionary. You can consult websites also. So you try to find out like how it is to be done. Now you are sure like how it is to be done because I have solved these two. So when can you submit this? You can submit I think by 5 o'clock today evening, and you already know the the website. Fine. So with this I end this class, this session. So all of you have understood this, the exercise, all of you.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So just you need to find out a little that where you can find this ending ITIS, or where you can find fine, likewise you need to do. let me take your attendance. Okay, I have taken your attendance. So we end this session. Fine. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.